Time has expired. The gentleman from California, Mr. Schiff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to Ranking Member Nadler for welcoming me back to the committee. Mr. Dunn, thank you for your testimony today, and I want to join my colleagues in expressing my condolence over your terrible loss. Since I last held a seat on this committee over 10 years ago, our country has undergone some of its most turbulent years, from attacks on our democracy to increasing gun violence, including 4 mass shootings in my home state of California in just the last week, to continuing acts of racial injustice. Many of the issues that Americans are most concerned about fall within this committee's jurisdiction. But instead of tackling those concerns or joining Democrats in a comprehensive immigration reform, many Republicans in Congress seem intent on demonizing migrant families and asylum seekers, portraying them as fentanyl traffickers and violent criminals. In the real world, asylum seekers are vulnerable individuals and families fleeing political persecution and torture. And these terrible stereotypes that my Republican colleagues are peddling have real-world consequences and bring real-world harm as they increase the level of hate and violence directed at immigrants here at home. More than that, let me just take this opportunity to recognize the many immigrants who risked their lives during the pandemic to take care of us when we were sick in the hospital with COVID, who brought food to our grocery stores and delivered goods to our doors, who worked in our fields so we would not go hungry, and who died disproportionately because they could not work from home. I want to say thank you for your courage. Our country is better off for having you here. I want to start my questions by debunking a couple pernicious stereotypes. First, when it comes to drug trafficking, CBP reports that over 83% of smuggled fentanyl, heroin, and methamphetamine is discovered during vehicle inspections at ports of entry where people enter the country legally, not smuggled by migrants, but driven across the border by U.S. citizens engaged in criminal activity at ports of entry. Judge Samaniego, the fentanyl crisis is real, but how is it really entering the country in your experience, and who is doing the smuggling?
Well, as you said, Congressman, they're coming in through the port of entries. We do not get a lot of information of migrants doing that. As I said earlier, the fact that they're not carrying much with them and the fact that they've been vetted as they come in when we process them, and that's why I keep insisting that an organized way of processing and our ability to be able to process properly is really helping tremendously. When we do not do that, and it pushes the migrants who have to go further out, that's when you start having these illegal entries because there's not a way for them to come in properly and meet the Border Patrol there at the border. And so we know that going further creates risk for them. They get preyed on. There's so many things happen by not following the process. And when we're allowed to do it and we're supported and funded properly, I think we do a lot for our country.
Thank you, Judge. Second, relative to undocumented immigrants, and using Texas as an example, U.S.-born citizens in Texas are more than twice as likely to be arrested for violent crimes and 2.5 times more likely to be arrested for drug crimes. Judge Samaniego, can you speak to the experiences and interactions you've had with migrant families and asylum seekers at the border? What is the real-life impact that such anti-migrant rhetoric and misinformation have on these communities?
Well, it's just, it's heartbreaking, obviously, that why they're coming in, they want to work. I'll give you an example. We've had individuals that were held back because they got caught up in, not being able to go back because of Title 42. And they were asking for, give us brooms, give us bags. We want to help us. We do not want to be perceived as lingering or burdening your community or any part of the country. And they talk a lot about the fact that they're wanting to work, they're passionate about working, and they're ready to do something for our country. We do not get, I interact with them completely. I work with the unaccompanied children, and I have a lot of exposure, and I feel extremely confident that the majority of them have no interest in drugs or doing anything like that other than to work and to participate and be part of the dream that they're looking for. And a lot of them, like I said, they're coming out of desperation of how they're treated in their countries, how they're persecuted, and they're looking for a better life. I do not, I stand here saying, with all honesty, that I do not see or understand some of the things that are said here today about them wanting to be part of drug cartels or putting them in that situation. It's just completely opposed to what I've experienced there in El Paso.
Gentleman's time has expired.
Thank you, Judge.
Gentleman from Florida, Mr. Gates.
Yield to Mr. Roy.